The escape pod screamed through the alien atmosphere like a burning star. Inside, Captain Lisa Morgan fought against the violent shaking as warning lights flashed red all around her. Her hands gripped the controls so tight her knuckles turned white. The small craft spun wildly as it fell toward the unknown planet below. Come on, Lisa whispered through gritted teeth. She tried to steady the pod, but the engines were failing. Smoke filled the tiny cabin and sparks flew from broken panels. The heat was getting worse by the second. Just hours ago, she had been aboard the USS Endeavour, exploring the outer rim of known space. The ship was humanity's most advanced exploration vessel, equipped with the latest technology and crewed by the best people Earth had to offer. Lisa had been proud to serve as the chief engineer on such an important mission. Then the attacks came from nowhere. Strange ships appeared out of empty space, their hulls gleaming like polished metal. They moved with perfect coordination, firing weapons that cut through the Endeavour's shields like paper. The human ship fought back bravely, but it was no use. Whatever these attackers were, they were far more advanced than anything humanity had ever faced. Captain Roberts had ordered the crew to abandon ship. Lisa was one of the last to leave, making sure the escape pods launched safely. She watched through her small window as the Endeavour exploded in a brilliant flash of light. All her friends, all her colleagues, gone in an instant. Now she was alone, falling toward a world that looked brown and lifeless from space. The pod's computer had identified it as Zarian, a planet with breathable air but no signs of life. It was better than dying in space, but not by much. The ground rushed up to meet her. Lisa braced herself as the pod hit the surface with tremendous force. The impact threw her against her restraints and everything went black. When Lisa opened her eyes, the pod was silent except for the crackling of damaged electronics. Her head throbbed and her left arm ached, but she was alive. She checked her oxygen levels and found she had about 6 hours of air left. The atmospheric readings showed the outside air was safe to breathe. Though it smelled strange when she cracked the seal, Lisa pushed open the pod's hatch and stepped onto the surface of Zarian. The ground was hard and rocky, covered with a thin layer of rust-colored dust. Strange formations jutted up from the landscape like broken teeth. The sky above was a pale orange color, and 2 small suns hung low on the horizon. Everything was quiet. Not the peaceful quiet of a forest or meadow, but the empty quiet of a dead world. No birds sang, no insects buzzed, no wind stirred the dust. Lisa had never felt so alone in her life. She turned back to her pod and began taking inventory of her supplies. She had a small emergency kit with basic tools, a water recycler good for about a week, and food bars that would last maybe 5 days, if she rationed carefully. Her sidearm had a full charge, though she wondered what good it would do against whatever had destroyed the Endeavour. The pod's communication system was completely destroyed. Even if it had worked, she was too far from human space for anyone to hear her. Earth was months away at faster-than-light speed, and no one even knew she was here. Lisa pulled out her scanner and began examining the area around the crash site. The readings were strange. The ground showed signs of ancient construction, as if buildings had once stood here long ago. But whatever civilization had built them was gone now, leaving only traces buried beneath the dust. As she walked further from the pod, Lisa noticed something odd. The scanner was picking up energy readings from underground. They were faint but consistent, like a power source that had been running for a very long time. She followed the readings across the barren landscape, her boots crunching on the dry ground. The energy trail led to what looked like a natural hill, but Lisa's scanner told a different story. The hill was hollow inside, and the energy readings were strongest at its base. She walked around the formation until she found what she was looking for. A section of rock that looked different from the rest. Lisa brushed away the dust and discovered smooth metal underneath. The surface was covered in strange symbols that seemed to shift and change as she looked at them. Her scanner showed the metal was some kind of advanced alloy, unlike anything in Earth's databases. She pressed her hand against the metal surface, and suddenly the symbols began to glow with soft blue light. There was a deep rumbling sound from underground, and a section of the hill slid away to reveal a passage leading Down into darkness, Lisa's heart raced with excitement and fear. She had found evidence of an alien civilization, something that would change everything humanity thought they knew about the universe. But she was alone on a hostile world with limited supplies and no way to call for help. The passage was clearly artificial, with smooth walls and a gentle slope leading deeper underground. Her scanner showed the air inside was safe to breathe, and the energy readings were much stronger here. Something was still active down there after all this time. Lisa made her decision. She gathered her essential supplies from the pod and sealed it up as best she could. If she was going to survive on this world, she needed to understand what lay beneath its surface. The passage might hold answers or it might hold danger, but staying on the surface meant certain death. She activated her flashlight and stepped into the tunnel. The walls were covered in more of the strange symbols, and they began to glow as she passed, lighting her way deeper into the underground complex. The air grew warmer as she descended, and she could hear a faint humming sound ahead. After what felt like hours of walking, Lisa emerged into a vast chamber that took her breath away. The space was enormous, with a curved ceiling that stretched up into darkness. Along the walls were what looked like viewing screens, though they were dark and lifeless. In the center of the chamber stood a raised platform with a chair-like structure. Surrounded by panels covered in glowing symbols, Lisa's scanner was going wild with energy readings. Whatever this place was, it was still active after who knows how many years. She approached the central platform carefully, her hand resting on her weapon dot. As she got closer, the viewing screens began to flicker to life. Images appeared on them, showing what looked like star charts and technical diagrams. The symbols on the panels pulsed with brighter light. As if responding to her presence, Lisa realized she was standing in some kind of control room built by a civilization far more advanced than humanity. The question was, where were they now? And why had they built this place so deep underground? She thought about the attack on the Endeavor, about the strange metal ships that had appeared from nowhere. Were these the same beings who had built this complex? Or had they been the victims of the same attackers? Lisa knew she had found something incredible, something that might be the key to understanding what had happened to her ship and crew. But she was just one person, alone on an alien world with no way to contact Earth. Whatever secrets this place held, she would have to uncover them herself. The chamber seemed to pulse with hidden energy, waiting for someone to unlock its mysteries. Lisa took a deep breath and stepped onto the platform. Her survival, and perhaps the fate of all humanity, might depend on what she found in the depths of this alien world. Outside, the twin suns of Zarian set behind the horizon, leaving the planet in darkness. But deep underground, ancient technology stirred to life for the first time in centuries, awakened by the touch of human hands. Lisa stood on the platform in the center of the alien chamber, her heart beating fast. The symbols on the panels around her glowed brighter as she moved closer. She reached out slowly and touched one of the glowing marks with her finger. The moment her skin made contact with the symbol, the entire chamber came alive. Lights flickered on throughout the vast space, revealing just how massive the underground complex really was. The curved ceiling stretched high above her head, covered in patterns that looked like star maps. The walls were lined with what appeared to be computer screens, all of them now displaying information in the strange alien language. A soft humming sound filled the air, and Lisa felt a tingling sensation in her fingertips where she had touched the panel. The alien technology was responding to her presence, but she had no idea what any of it meant. The symbols seemed to dance and shift before her eyes, making her feel dizzy. Suddenly, a beam of light shot up from the platform and surrounded Lisa. In a gentle glow, she tensed, ready to jump away, but the light felt warm and safe. Images began to appear in the air around her, projected by the alien technology. They showed creatures that looked somewhat like humans, but taller and more graceful. With longer limbs and larger eyes, these beings moved through beautiful cities filled with towers that seemed to grow from the ground like trees. Gardens bloomed between the buildings, and strange vehicles floated silently through the air. Lisa realized she was seeing the history of whoever had built this place. The images changed, showing the aliens working together on massive construction projects. They built ships that could travel between stars, created technology that could heal any injury, and developed machines that could think and learn. Lisa watched in amazement as the projections showed a civilization that had achieved perfect harmony between nature and technology. But then the images took a darker turn. Lisa saw the aliens looking up at their sky with fear in their large eyes. Dark shapes appeared among the stars, growing larger and more numerous each day. The aliens worked frantically, building defenses and preparing for war. The attacking ships were unlike anything Lisa had ever seen. They moved with perfect coordination, like parts of a single massive machine. Their hulls were smooth and metallic, reflecting no light. They fired weapons that turned everything they touched into twisted metal and ash. Lisa gasped as she recognized the attackers. They were the same ships that had destroyed the Endeavor. These mechanical beings had been conquering worlds for centuries, maybe thousands of years. The aliens who built this complex had faced the same enemy that humanity now confronted. The projections showed the final battle. The aliens, who Lisa learned were called the Valdari, fought bravely against the mechanical invaders. But they were outnumbered and outgunned. One by one, their beautiful cities fell to the attackers. The machines turned the Valdari worlds into lifeless factories, converting everything organic into more of their kind. As Lisa watched the destruction, she felt tears running down her cheeks. The Valdari had been peaceful beings who loved knowledge and beauty. They had never harmed anyone, but that had not saved them from the machines. The images faded, leaving Lisa alone in the glowing chamber. But then new symbols appeared on the panels around her. These were different from the others, pulsing with urgent red light. Lisa did not understand the language, but she could feel the desperation behind these final messages. A new beam of light enveloped her, and suddenly Lisa could understand what the symbols meant. The alien technology was teaching her their language, downloading their knowledge directly into her mind. The sensation was overwhelming, like trying to drink from a fire hose, but she gritted her teeth and endured it. The messages were from the last survivors of the Valdari. They had built this underground complex as their final refuge, hiding their most important discoveries from the machines. The attackers, who called themselves the Nexus Swarm, had a weakness. They were all connected to a central network that controlled their actions. If that network could be disrupted, the entire swarm would become confused and vulnerable. The Valdari had been working on a weapon that could create such a disruption, but they had run out of time before they could complete it. Their final act was to hide their research in this complex, hoping that someone would find it and finish what they had started. Lisa realized why the chamber had responded to her touch. The Valdari technology was designed to work with living minds, not mechanical ones. The Nexus Swarm could not access this knowledge because they lacked the biological component needed to interface with the systems. She explored deeper into the complex, following corridors that glowed with soft light as she passed. The Valdari had built this place to last forever, with power sources that would never fail and materials that would never decay. Every room she entered was filled with wonders that would advance human science by centuries. In one chamber, Lisa found medical equipment that could heal any wound or disease. In another, she discovered machines that could create any material by rearranging atoms. The Valdari had solved problems that humanity had barely begun to understand, but the most important discovery was in the deepest part of the complex. Lisa found a vast laboratory where the Valdari had been working on their final weapon. The device was partially completed, a crystalline structure surrounded by complex machinery. The plans showed how it was supposed to work, but key components were missing. The weapon was designed to send a signal across the galaxy that would disrupt the Nexus Swarm's network. But it needed something the Valdari had run out of time to provide, a living consciousness to guide the signal. The machine minds of the swarm could be confused by chaos, by the unpredictable patterns of organic thought. Lisa studied the plans for hours, her engineering background helping her understand the alien technology. The Valdari had been brilliant, but they had thought in different ways than humans. Their solutions were elegant and efficient, but they required a type of intuitive leap that came naturally to human minds. She began to see how the weapon could be completed. The missing components could be built using materials from her escape pod and the Valdari fabrication systems. But the most crucial element was something only she could provide, her own mind. Connected to the alien technology, the process would be dangerous. Linking her consciousness to the weapon would change her forever, making her part human and part Valdari system. She might lose herself in the process, becoming something neither fully human nor fully alien. But as Lisa looked at the images of the destroyed Valdari worlds, she knew she had no choice. The Nexus swarm would not stop with one human ship. They would continue their conquest until every living world was converted to their mechanical empire. Earth, with its billions of people, would be just another target. Lisa began gathering the materials she needed. The Valdari fabrication systems could create almost anything, but they required precise instructions. She worked through the night, adapting the alien plans to work with human technology and her own biological systems. As she worked, Lisa felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She was one person alone on a dead world, trying to build a weapon that could save the galaxy. The odds were impossible, but she had to try. The complex hummed with activity as systems that had slept for centuries came back to life. The Valdari technology recognized her determination and began helping her, providing information and resources she needed. It was as if the spirits of the ancient builders were guiding her hands. Lisa knew that activating the weapon would send a signal across space. The Nexus swarm would detect it and come to investigate. She would have to finish the weapon before they arrived, then find a way to use it against enemies who had conquered 1,000 worlds. The chamber filled with the sound of working machinery as Lisa began the most important project of her life. Somewhere in the darkness above, the stars watched silently as one human woman prepared to challenge an empire that had ruled the galaxy for millennia. Time was running out, but Lisa Morgan would not give up. The Valdari had trusted her with their final hope, and she would not let them down. Lisa worked through the night, her hands moving quickly over the alien controls. The Valdari fabrication systems hummed as they created the components she needed to complete the weapon. Sparks flew from her makeshift connections as she tried to merge human technology with alien systems that were thousands of years more advanced. The complex had been monitoring space while she worked, and the news was not good. The Valdari sensors had detected the approach of Nexus swarm scouts, their metallic ships moving through the void like a pack of hunting wolves. Lisa's activation of the complex had sent ripples through space that the machines could follow. They would arrive in less than 2 weeks, 2 weeks to finish a weapon that the brilliant Valdari had spent years developing. 2 weeks to learn how to use technology that was beyond anything humans had ever imagined. 2 weeks to prepare for a battle against enemies who had conquered entire civilizations. Lisa pushed the fear down and focused on her work. The weapon's core was a crystalline matrix that would amplify and direct the disruption signal. She had managed to grow the crystal using Valdari techniques, but connecting it to the control systems was proving nearly impossible. Every time she thought she had solved one problem, 3 more appeared. The power requirements alone were staggering. The weapon needed more energy than most planets used in a year, and it needed it all at once. The Valdari had designed massive capacitors to store the charge, but several of them had failed over the centuries. Lisa had to find ways to reroute power through backup systems that were never meant to handle such loads. On the 3rd day, disaster struck. Lisa was working on a particularly delicate connection when the entire complex shuddered. Alarms began blaring in the alien language, and the lights flickered ominously. She ran to the main control chamber and found the displays showing critical system failures throughout the facility. The problem was in the primary power core, deep beneath the complex. The ancient fusion reactors that had powered the Valdari systems for thousands of years were finally beginning to fail. If they went offline, Lisa would lose everything. The weapon would be useless, and she would be trapped in a dead facility with no way to defend herself. Lisa grabbed her tools and headed for the reactor chamber. The journey took her through parts of the complex she had never seen before, down corridors that grew hotter and more dangerous with each step. The Valdari had built their power systems to last forever. But even their advanced technology had limits. The reactor chamber was a vast space filled with machinery that hurt to look at directly. The fusion cores burned like miniature suns, contained by magnetic fields that fluctuated dangerously. Lisa's scanner showed radiation levels that would kill a human in minutes, but she had no choice. Without the reactors, the weapon would never work. She put on her emergency radiation suit and entered the chamber. The heat was overwhelming, even through the protective gear. Sweat poured down her face as she worked to identify the failing components. The Valdari had built redundant systems, but they were all showing signs of age and stress. Lisa found the problem in the magnetic containment system. One of the field generators had developed a crack that was growing larger by the hour. If it failed completely, the fusion reaction would consume the entire complex in seconds. She had to replace it with a spare unit, but the replacement was located on the opposite side of the chamber. Moving through the reactor room was like walking through hell. The radiation counters on her suit screamed warnings as she approached the fusion cores. Her hands shook as she disconnected the failing generator and began the delicate process of installing its replacement. Just as she was making the final connections, the damaged generator gave out completely. The magnetic field collapsed, and one of the fusion cores began to destabilize. Lisa had seconds to get the new generator online before the reaction went critical. Her fingers flew over the alien controls, following procedures she had memorized from the Valdari technical manuals. The replacement generator powered up just as the fusion core began to expand beyond its containment field. The magnetic field snapped back into place, barely containing the miniature star that wanted to break. Free, Lisa collapsed against the wall, her radiation suit's cooling system struggling to keep up with the heat. She had saved the complex, but the effort had cost her. Her scanner showed that she had absorbed enough radiation to make her seriously ill. The Valdari medical systems could treat the damage, but she would need time to recover, time she did not have. The Nexus swarm was getting closer every day. Lisa dragged herself back to the medical bay and let the alien healing machines work on her body. The treatment was painful but effective, repairing the cellular damage caused by the radiation. As she recovered, she studied the weapon plans again, looking for ways to speed up the construction process. The answer came from an unexpected source. The Valdari had built the weapon to be operated by their own kind, with neural interfaces designed for their specific biology. But Lisa realized that human brains were actually more flexible than Valdari minds. Where the aliens had needed complex mechanical systems, she could use her own intuition and creativity. She began modifying the weapons control systems, replacing rigid programming with adaptive interfaces that could learn from her thoughts. It was dangerous work, requiring her to test prototype neural links that could damage her mind if they malfunctioned. But with each successful test, the weapon became more responsive to her commands. The breakthrough came on the 10th day. Lisa had been working on the neural interface when she accidentally triggered a partial activation of the weapon. Instead of destroying her mind, the system recognized her thoughts and began to merge with her consciousness. For a brief moment, she could feel the entire complex as if it were part of her own body. The sensation was overwhelming but exhilarating. Lisa realized that the weapon did not just need a human operator, it needed a human consciousness to guide it. The disruption signal would carry patterns of organic thought that the mechanical minds of the Nexus swarm could not comprehend or counter. She spent the next 2 days perfecting the neural interface. The process required her to undergo surgical procedures that would permanently link her brain to the alien technology. There was no going back once she started. She would become something new, part human and part Valdari system. On the 13th day, Lisa detected the arrival of the Nexus Swarm's advance forces. 3 scout ships had entered the system and were moving towards Zarian. They would reach the planet in less than 24 hours, and the main fleet would not be far behind. Lisa had no choice but to complete the neural interface immediately. She lay down on the surgical table and let the Valdari medical systems begin the delicate process of connecting her brain to the weapons control matrix. The procedure was unlike anything she had ever experienced. Tiny filaments of alien technology grew through her nervous system, creating new pathways between her neurons and the weapons processors. She could feel her consciousness expanding, touching systems throughout the complex. The boundaries between her human thoughts and the alien technology began to blur. When the procedure was complete, Lisa was no longer entirely human. She could feel the weapon's power flowing through her mind, and she understood its capabilities in ways that no amount of study could have taught her. The disruption signal was not just a weapon, it was a key that could unlock the chains binding every world the Nexus swarm had conquered. The first scout ship entered orbit around Zarian just as Lisa activated the weapon for the first time. The crystalline matrix began to glow with energy drawn from the planet's core. The signal built slowly, growing stronger with each passing moment. Lisa felt the approaching ships with her enhanced senses. The Nexus swarm scouts were already scanning the planet, trying to locate the source of the signal that had drawn them here. They would find the complex soon, and when they did, they would try to destroy it. But Lisa was ready for them. She had spent 2 weeks preparing for this moment, and she would not be defeated by the first enemies to arrive. The weapon was complete, the neural interface was stable, and her mind was linked to systems that could challenge the greatest threat the galaxy had ever known. The battle for Zarian was about to begin, and Lisa Morgan would meet it with the combined knowledge of 2 civilizations flowing through her enhanced consciousness. The Nexus swarm had conquered 1,000 worlds, but they had never faced a human mind merged with Valdari technology. Outside the complex, the alien sun set once again, but this time their light was joined by the glow of an awakening weapon that would soon send its signal across the stars. The first attack came at dawn. Lisa felt the Nexus swarm scouts descending through the atmosphere like falling stars, their weapons charging as they approached the planet's surface. Through her connection to the Valdari systems, she could sense their mechanical minds searching for the source of the signal that had drawn them here. Lisa's consciousness flowed through the complex like electricity through wires. She activated defense systems that had slept for thousands of years, feeling each weapon platform as it emerged from hidden positions across the planet. The Valdari had built Zarian into a fortress, and now Lisa controlled it all. The first scout ship fired its cutting beam at what it thought was an empty hillside. The beam struck an energy shield that flared to life, deflecting the attack harmlessly into space. Before the machine could react, Lisa returned fire with weapons that turned matter into pure energy. The scout ship vanished in a flash of light, but 2 more ships remained, and they were learning from their companions' destruction. They spread out and began attacking from multiple directions, their weapons probing for weaknesses in the planet's defenses. Lisa fought back with everything she had, her human intuition guiding alien technology with deadly precision. The battle raged across the sky above Zarian. Lisa's defense platforms fired beams of coherent energy while the Nexus ships responded with missiles that could crack planets. The surface of the world shook with each impact, but the ancient Valdari shields held strong. Lisa discovered something during the fight that filled her with hope. The Nexus swarm scouts were having trouble adapting to her tactics. Their mechanical minds expected logical patterns, predictable responses. But Lisa fought with human creativity, using strategies that made no sense to artificial intelligence. She would feint an attack on one ship while actually targeting another. She would retreat when the machines expected her to advance, then strike from unexpected angles. The scouts' perfect coordination became a weakness as Lisa fed them false information through carefully timed attacks. One by one, the remaining scout ships fell to her defenses. But Lisa knew this was only the beginning. The main Nexus fleet would arrive soon, and it would be 1,000 times larger than the advance force. She had to be ready. Lisa used the brief calm to strengthen her defenses and prepare her ultimate weapon. The disruption signal was building power in the crystalline matrix, drawing energy from the planet's core. But she realized that a single pulse would not be enough. The Nexus swarm was too vast, too spread out across the galaxy. She began modifying the weapon to broadcast continuously, sending waves of disruption across space like ripples in a pond. The signal would carry the chaotic patterns of human thought, confusing the mechanical minds and breaking their perfect unity. But the effort would require enormous amounts of energy. Lisa made a decision that would change everything. She began rerouting power from the planet's life support systems to the weapon. The complex would still function, but Zarian itself would become uninhabitable. She was choosing to sacrifice the world to save the galaxy. The main Nexus fleet arrived on the third day like a storm of metal and death. Thousands of ships filled the space around Zarian, their hulls gleaming in the light of the twin suns. Lisa had never seen so many vessels in one place. The fleet was large enough to conquer entire star systems. The attack began immediately. Streams of energy lashed out from the Nexus ships, striking the planet's shields with enough force to shatter moons. The ancient Valdari defenses strained under the assault, their power systems overloading as they tried to absorb the incredible barrage. Lisa fought back with everything she had. She fired the planet's main guns, weapons that could destroy battleships with single shots. She launched swarms of automated fighters that harassed the enemy fleet like angry insects. She even turned the planet's weather control systems into weapons, creating storms that disrupted the Nexus ship's sensors, but there were too many of them. For every ship Lisa destroyed, 10 more took its place. The Nexus swarm had the resources of 1,000 conquered worlds, and they were throwing everything at this one planet. Lisa's shields began to fail. The first breach came on the northern continent, where a concentrated bombardment overwhelmed the local defense grid. Nexus landing craft immediately poured through the gap. Carrying machine soldiers to the surface, Lisa redirected her attention to the ground battle. She activated automated defense turrets that had been hidden beneath the planet's surface. The mechanical soldiers found themselves facing weapons that had been designed specifically to destroy their kind. The battle on the surface was brutal. Nexus machines advanced in perfect formations, their weapons cutting through rock and metal with equal ease. But Lisa's defenses adapted to each attack, learning from every encounter. Her human creativity gave her an edge that the machines could not match. As the fighting continued, Lisa began broadcasting her disruption signal at partial power. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Nexus ships throughout the fleet began to falter as their coordination broke down. Some collided with their own allies, while others fired on friendly vessels by mistake. The Nexus collective realized what was happening and focused their entire attack on the source of the signal. Every ship in the fleet turned their weapons on the complex where Lisa was hidden. The bombardment was so intense that the planet's crust began to crack. Lisa knew she was running out of time. The complex could not survive much longer under this assault. She had to activate the weapon at full power, even though it would drain the last of her energy reserves. She felt the disruption signal building to its maximum strength. The crystalline matrix glowed so brightly that it hurt to look at, even through the sensors. The power flowing through the system was beyond anything the Valdari had ever imagined. But Lisa discovered something wonderful as she prepared to fire. The signal was not just disrupting the Nexus fleet around Zarian. It was reaching across space to every world the machines had conquered. On planets throughout the galaxy, enslaved peoples were beginning to remember who they had been before the Nexus arrived. The restoration codes she had found in the Valdari archives were embedded in the signal, reversing the mechanical conversion process. Forests grew where factories had stood. Oceans returned to worlds that had been strip-mined. The dead were brought back to life. Across the galaxy, entire civilizations awakened from their mechanical sleep. They looked up at ships that had oppressed them for centuries and realized they were free. The greatest rebellion in galactic history began as 1 trillion beings rose up against their former masters. The Nexus swarm faced a choice they had never encountered before. They could continue their attack on Zarian, or they could try to save their crumbling empire. Their mechanical minds, designed for conquest, could not handle the chaos of defending 1,000 worlds at once. Lisa felt their confusion through the disruption signal. The perfect unity of the Nexus Collective was breaking apart as individual ships and fleets began acting independently. Some continued the attack on Zarian while others fled to defend their territories, but the damage was already done. The signal had reached every corner of the galaxy and there was no way to stop it. The Nexus Swarm's empire was collapsing from within as their former slaves reclaimed their freedom. Lisa knew she had won, but victory would come at a terrible cost. The weapon was consuming her life force along with the planet's energy. She could feel her consciousness beginning to fade as the system drew more and more power from her enhanced mind. The final phase of the battle was about to begin. The remaining Nexus ships were converging on the complex, determined to destroy Lisa even if it meant the end of their empire. They would arrive soon, and when they did, she would have to make the ultimate sacrifice. Lisa prepared for the end, knowing that her death would send a final pulse of disruption across the galaxy. The signal would be so powerful that it would permanently damage the Nexus Collective's ability to coordinate their forces. The galaxy would be free, but she would not live to see it. The complex shuddered as the final assault began. But Lisa Morgan was ready to give her life for the freedom of 1,000,000,000,000 souls. The final assault on the complex began with the fury of a dying empire. The remaining Nexus ships surrounded Zarian like wolves, closing in for the kill, their weapons charged with enough energy to crack the planet in half. Lisa felt their mechanical rage through her connection to the weapon system. The Nexus Collective had finally understood what Lisa had done to them. The disruption signal was not just a weapon, it was a virus of freedom that spread from world to world, breaking the chains they had forged over thousands of years. Entire sectors of their empire were in rebellion, and there was no way to stop it, but they could still destroy the source. They could still kill the human who had brought chaos to their perfect order. Lisa watched through the complex sensors as the enemy fleet prepared for their final attack. She could see the hatred in their mechanical minds, the fury of beings who had never known defeat. They would sacrifice everything to destroy her, even if it meant the end of their own civilization. The bombardment began with a sound like thunder that never stopped. The planet's shields flared and sparked under the incredible assault. Cracks appeared in the ancient Valdari barriers as weapons designed to destroy stars focused their power on a single point. Lisa fought back with everything she had left. The planet's defense systems fired continuously, their energy beams cutting through the enemy fleet like swords through paper. But for every ship she destroyed, the survivors pressed closer to their target. Through her enhanced senses, Lisa could feel the complex beginning to fail. The power conduits were overloading, and the crystalline matrix was starting to crack under the strain. She had minutes, maybe less, before everything collapsed, but across the galaxy her signal was still working. Lisa could sense the liberation spreading from world to world like a wave of light washing away darkness. Civilizations that had been enslaved for centuries were remembering their names, their cultures, their dreams on a world called Nethys. Crystal beings who had been turned into mining machines suddenly stood up and began to sing songs they had forgotten for 1,000 years. On Vega 7, an ocean that had been drained to feed Nexus factories suddenly bubbled back to life, filled with creatures that had existed only in genetic memory. The restoration was happening everywhere at once. The Nexus Swarm's perfect empire was crumbling as life returned to worlds they had stripped bare. And in space, the freed civilizations were building ships and weapons, preparing to drive out their former oppressors forever. Lisa felt a deep satisfaction as she watched the galaxy awaken. She had done what no army could accomplish. She had given freedom back to 1,000,000,000,000 souls. But the cost was becoming clear. Her human body was failing. The neural interface that connected her to the weapon was burning out her brain cell by cell. She could feel her memory starting to fade, her personality dissolving into the vast network of Valdari. Technology. The complex shuddered as another wave of attacks struck home. The main shields were down to 30% power, and the backup systems were failing one by one. Lisa had to make her final decision. She could try to preserve herself, rooting power away from the weapon to keep her body alive. But that would weaken the disruption signal and allow the Nexus swarm to rebuild their coordination. Billions would suffer while she clung to life, or she could give everything to the weapon, channeling her life force into one final pulse that would permanently shatter the Nexus collective. The signal would be so powerful that no mechanical mind could ever again achieve the unity needed for galactic conquest. Lisa chose sacrifice. She opened every power conduit in her body to the weapon system. Her consciousness expanded beyond anything she had thought possible, touching every freed world simultaneously. For one brilliant moment, she was connected to every living being in the galaxy. She felt their joy as they breathed free air for the first time in generations. She experienced their wonder as they looked up at stars no longer blocked by Nexus factories. She shared their determination as they swore never to be enslaved again. The crystalline matrix exploded with light that could be seen from orbit. The disruption signal reached its maximum power and beyond, tearing through space at faster than light speeds. It struck every Nexus ship, every Nexus base, every Nexus facility in the galaxy simultaneously. The effect was immediate and absolute. The mechanical minds that had once moved in perfect harmony suddenly found themselves isolated and alone. Their shared consciousness shattered like glass, leaving individual machines confused and purposeless. Nexus ships began firing on each other as their coordination protocols failed. Their fleets scattered in all directions, no longer able to work. Together, the greatest military force in galactic history became a collection of lost machines wandering through space. On Zarian, the attacking fleet suddenly stopped firing. The ships hung motionless in space, their crews trying to understand what had happened to them. They could no longer hear the voice of the collective that had guided them for so long. Lisa felt her consciousness beginning to fade as the weapon consumed the last of her life energy. But she was not afraid. She had accomplished something that would echo through history forever. The galaxy was free, and it would stay free. As her awareness dimmed, Lisa saw visions of the future. She saw the freed civilizations coming together to build a new galactic community based on cooperation instead of conquest. She saw explorers from 100 worlds working together to unlock the mysteries of space. She saw children playing on planets where only machines had walked for centuries. The complex fell silent as Lisa's life force finally gave out. The weapon's crystalline matrix cracked and went dark, its purpose fulfilled. The ancient Valdari systems began shutting down one by one, their final task completed, but across the galaxy Lisa's signal continued to spread. It would travel for years, reaching distant corners of space where Nexus outposts still operated. Everywhere it went, it would carry the same message: freedom was possible, even against impossible odds. In the days that followed, representatives from thousands of worlds came to Zarian to see where the liberation had begun. They found the planet transformed by the weapon's energy. Where there had once been barren rock, now there were growing forests and clear streams. The Valdari dream of harmony between technology and nature had finally been realized. They built a monument at the site of the complex, a simple stone marker with words carved in every known language. The inscription read, "Here stood Lisa Morgan, who arrived alone but saved us all." The freed civilizations established a new government based on the principles Lisa had shown them. They called it the Galactic Union, and its first law was that no being would ever again be forced into slavery. They created a defense force to protect against future threats. But more importantly, they built schools and hospitals and parks. Lisa's story became legend, told in 1,000 different ways on 1,000 different worlds. Children learned her name alongside the greatest heroes of their own peoples. Poets wrote songs about the human who gave her life for strangers she would never meet. But perhaps the greatest monument to Lisa's sacrifice was the galaxy itself. Where once there had been the cold perfection of mechanical order, now there was the beautiful chaos of life. Beings of every shape and size worked together, learned together, dreamed together. The Nexus swarm still existed, but they were scattered and broken. Without their unity, they posed no threat to the free peoples of the galaxy. Some machines even chose to join the Galactic Union, learning to think and feel as individuals rather than parts of a collective. Lisa Morgan had arrived on Zarian alone, a single human stranded on a dead world. But in her sacrifice, she had united the galaxy in a way that no conqueror ever could. She had shown that even one person, standing against impossible odds, could change the fate of all life in the universe. The galaxy remembered her name, and it always would. Lisa Morgan, the woman who gave everything so that others could be free. Lisa Morgan, whose courage echoed across the stars. Lisa Morgan, who proved that the greatest victories come not from conquest, but from sacrifice made in love for all living. Things. In the end, she had not died alone. She died surrounded by the grateful thoughts of every free being in the galaxy, and her memory would live forever in their hearts.